Israel's expansionist project requires that neighboring countries be weakened militarily, technologically, economically, and socially, so that the Israeli regime permanently enjoys the upper hand. Under this project, Israel is free to expand its military arsenal without limits, including weapons of mass destruction that remain outside any inspection regime.
That was Iran's foreign minister speaking at the Al Jazeera Forum in regard to Israel's goals against Iran as it continues to goad the United States to invade and engage in military intervention on its behalf. And it's important to know about the Greater Israel Project because thanks to Israel, the United States is in fact preparing for a sustained war against Iran. You can see that as far as our Navy goes, we have a third of our Navy deployed in the region at this point, and that's going to put our soldiers at risk again on behalf of a war that would be fought for Israel. Now, with that in mind, let's just keep in mind that US soldiers could lose their lives. There's a lot at stake here, and I'm not the only one saying that. In fact, here is warmonger Senator Lindsey Graham saying something very similar.
Could our soldiers be hit in the region? Absolutely, they could. Can Iran respond if we have an all-out attack? Absolutely, they can.
Now, before I get into more details on this, Cenk, I'm curious what your 2 cents are.
So I want to talk about what Israel's worried about there and what we're worried about and how exposed our troops are a little bit later in this story. And I also want to tell you why Israel's demands, and hence our demands, since we don't really run our own government, are impossible for Iran to follow through on. So that's why this war seems inevitable. But let's give you all the facts and then come back and talk about those 2 things.
Exactly. So right now, the United States and Iran are expected to hold the second round of nuclear talks in Geneva. This is supposed to take place on Tuesday this week. Now, at the heart of this battle is Israel, which is demanding that the United States engage in war with Iran on its behalf. Now, why? Now, what they really want, what the Israelis really want, is regime change in Iran. That is their number one goal. And what they do is use these various, facade issues, I like to call it. They like to shroud this potential war in these faux concerns about Iran's nuclear capability. It has none, especially at this moment, after the US helped Israel in bombing Iran's nuclear sites. But what Israel is doing is now it has kind of engaged in more poison pills when it comes to these peace negotiations, because Israel is saying that no longer enriching uranium, no longer working on a nuclear program. That's not enough. We want Iran to give up its ballistic missiles, and that Trump should not, under any circumstance, make a deal with Iran unless they do give up their ballistic missiles. In fact, this past weekend, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel was speaking at an Israeli event, and he doubled down on that demand of the Trump administration. Take a look.
All enriched material has to leave Iran. The second is that there shall be no enrichment capability, not stopping the enrichment process, but dismantle the equipment and the infrastructure that allows you to enrich in the first place. And the third is to deal also with the questions of ballistic missiles. Remember Ronald Reagan's dictum vis-a-vis the Soviet Union? Trust but verify, distrust, and always verify. So there has to be real inspections, substantive inspections.
Now, the group that we should be distrustful toward, of course, are the Israelis, because they have led us into various wars that have not worked out for the United States. In fact, it's been at the detriment of the United States. And certainly a war with Iran would fall under that category. Now, just quickly going back to what Netanyahu said about Iran's ballistic missiles, Iran has been very clear. They are unwilling to do away with their ballistic missiles. Now, why is that? Because it's literally their only line of defense against Israel. Without ballistic missiles, they have no way of defending themselves should Israel or the United States, at the behest of Israel, carry out strikes or attack Iran. So they're saying, no, this is not something that we're willing to negotiate. We are willing to have a conversation about enriching uranium. uranium or a nuclear deal that would allow for more oversight in Iran, but we're not giving away our ballistic missiles. In the meantime, the Trump administration continues to build up military assets in the region in preparation for a sustained war. Because if the US refuses to strike Iran over ballistic missiles, Israel has said and made very clear, well, we're going to go at it alone, which we all know is not really going to be the outcome of the situation. If Israel, much like the 12-day war, attacks Iran, there is no doubt that the United States is going to get dragged into a hot war with Iran. Now, here's what's concerning, and CBS News reported this. I want to note that this statement by Trump dates back to December 29th of last year. Little suspicious that CBS is bringing it back up in the context of what's happening with Iran today, but this is what they reported. Trump told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during a Mar-a-Lago during a meeting at Mar-a-Lago in December that the president would support Israeli strikes on Iran's ballistic missile program if a deal between Washington and Tehran could not be reached. Now, the Quincy Institute is arguing that this is really meant to kind of goad the Trump administration into attacking Iran. I don't know how true that happens to be. I know I don't really trust the reporting from CBS with Barry Weiss at the helm. But nonetheless, even though this is being reported by CBS, Trump says different things at any given moment. So I don't really put a lot of faith or trust behind him in doing the right thing, especially when Israel is involved, because as we know, Trump has carried out pretty much everything Israel has wanted. Now, I also want to talk a little bit, Cenk, about Iran's military capability later on. But before we get to that, curious what you think about Trump's unpredictability and whether you think we're going to enter this sustained war with Iran, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, so I think that the problem is that I'm not sure how we can get to peace. So the reason I say that is because and there's some reporting here that gives a sliver of hope, but so what Israel's saying now is not, hey, let's get rid of their nukes, which they didn't have any nuclear weapons. Let's get rid of their nuclear weapons facilities, which now we have bombed and gotten rid of. They're saying they want no uranium capacity at all. Well, okay, I don't really know what that means, but it's like everyone else is allowed to have it for nuclear energy, but Iran's not allowed to have it for anything at all. Okay, all right, so maybe we could work with that, but they've often resisted that. Then they say they have to get rid of all of their ballistic missiles. Well, that no one would agree to that. That's absurd. You only make that demand if you think that you want war and you want to blame them for it. I mean, would we give up all of our missiles for what? Why would we ever do that? What an insane thing to ask any country to do, right? But and of course, never help the Palestinians. Why? The Israelis want the entire Middle East to be defenseless, and then they're going to attack them over and over again. Later in the program, we're going to show you how they've bombed Lebanon 1,000 times since this ceasefire. They're in Syria, they're in Lebanon, they're beginning to annex the West Bank. No, they're an imperial empire and they want the entire country to be, region to be defenseless. So they stuffed all these poison pills into this negotiation so the Iranians can't possibly say yes, right? So the sliver of hope that I read, Anna, was that, that maybe Trump is backing away from the demands on ballistic missiles and some of the outrageous demands. Now, what is the difference between our position and the Israeli position? Well, that has everything to do with what kind of leverage the Israelis have on Trump. Because the American position is not related to American interests at all. If you take out Israel first, but you put in every Republican and every Democrat and every independent, and you poll without Israel first, who wants to go to war with Iran? Who do you think a war with Iran will help your life or not help your life? I mean, we're going to be at a near zero for a number of Americans who want to go to war with Iran. No one wants it on either side. The only people that want it are the Israelis. So this constant back and forth is, Trump knows that it's going to make him super unpopular. He ran on anti-war, he's a pro-war president. The Epstein files have totally destroyed his credibility. If he now just starts a massive land war in the Middle East, like he said he wouldn't do, he's going to go down to the teens in approval. Everyone in the country is going to despise him, and maybe his own voters most of all because of the betrayal that he did. On the other hand, apparently the Israelis have, went to the end of the rainbow and got a pot of gold on Trump blackmail or bribes or whatever they're using to influence them. Because no Democratic or Republican president would agree to the demands of Israel that we start a war in Iran on their behalf. Iran has absolutely nothing to do with us. What are they gonna do? Because before, Anna, their excuse was, oh, the nukes. What if somehow they eventually built nukes and they somehow got them to America? But now that's over, they can't do that. Their ballistic missiles couldn't possibly reach us. So what's our interest in this? None, other than the fact that our government serves Israel.
None. In fact, the hostility that exists in this relationship between the United States and Iran is fully the fault of Israel. In fact, we wouldn't have issues with Iran if it weren't for Israel. One of the bargaining chips that Iran is, trying to use to kind of make a peace deal more enticing for Trump is they're like, you know what, we'll open up possible economic opportunities for the United States. We've got a lot of oil, and maybe there's some economic deals to be made here as part of a diplomatic effort, as part of a diplomatic peace deal that will lead to a little more stability in the region. The thing is, as long as our country, and more importantly, our government, seems to be captured or beholden to the Israeli government, then our politicians, including the president of the United States, is going to continue carrying out policies that don't serve the American people. It serves Israel, certainly. Doesn't serve us, it's actually at the detriment of the American people.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.